This is number 154 Brick Lane, which back in Victorian times was the Two Brewers pub. On Monday, the 6th of August 1888, this is where the Jack the Ripper story began. But the details of what supposedly happened come solely from a woman named Mary Ann Connelly. Late that evening, she would state, in the company of two off-duty soldiers, she was drinking here with 39-year-old Martha Tabram, although she actually believed Martha's surname to be Turner, which was what she often went by. At 10:45, however, the four had then left and made their way southwest to the White Swan, which, at the time, stood here on Whitechapel High Street, 5 doors from the junction. On passing by the White Swan at 11 o'clock, a woman named Anne Morris actually saw Martha standing outside, although she seemed to be alone. But by 11:45, Mary Ann would state they had left that pub too and walked east across the junction. Martha, she said, with one of the men accompanying her, had then made her way north across these cobblestones into what is now known as Gunthorpe Street, and that was the last time she was ever seen alive. 5 hours later, at 4:45 a.m., 23-year-old John Reeves then awoke in his room on the 4th floor of the George Yard building, which until 1973 stood right here on the street's northwestern corner. Reeves was a waterside labourer by trade, was rising early to get to work, and at 10 minutes to 5, he would remember, he left his room and began descending the stairs. All had seemed normal as he made his way past the 3rd and 2nd floors, but on arriving at the 1st, he found Martha lying dead on the landing. She was lying on her back in a pool of blood, with both arms by her sides and her eyes wide open. Her legs were wide apart, her clothing was disarranged, and she'd been stabbed 39 times. Whoever killed her had also torn off part of the dress she was wearing and would seem to have taken it with him. A police manhunt, anyway, was soon underway, but the two soldiers that Mary Ann had spoken of were never actually identified. It all seemed somewhat strange, and some investigators, in fact, even thought that she was lying. If she was, the entire story of Martha Tabram is simply that she was seen alone outside of the White Swan at 11 p.m. and then found dead nearly 6 hours later. Why exactly the four of them would have walked 2/3 of a mile to the White Swan so late in the evening was also never explained, but Mary Ann had referred to Martha as Turner, which makes it sound like she did in fact know her, and would seem to have stated that she was at the White Swan before Anne Morris's sighting made it into the newspapers. Whoever committed the murder, however, has never been identified. Don't forget to leave a like on the video. I'll see you back here next week for another Morbid Monday.